Late in 2021, I saw a lot of predictions that 2022 was going to be kind of a lackluster year in video games, as things like chip shortages, the pandemic, and several other things going on in the world had delayed a lot of game titles into 2023. But were those predictions correct? Well, let's find out by taking a look at my year in gaming in the year 2022. Serious Sam is a series I've been with since day one on the PC. If you have yet to play any of these games, I would definitely recommend giving one a try. They've all been remastered for console nowadays, but I mean really if you want to see the latest and greatest, getting Serious Sam 4 would be a definite must-have. And I did spend some money and get the Serious Sam Siberian Mayhem expansion for it, which came out on PC back in January, but I got it when it hit consoles. This is actually an expansion to Serious Sam 4 called Siberian Mayhem, and depending on who you are, you may think that the price point is worth it, but just keep in mind this is just a little bit more of the same things you would see in Serious Sam 4. There are a total of 5 new levels, and what got me are the creative weapons they have included in the Serious Sam series over the years, and they've definitely packed in some more into this expansion. I think fans of the series will get a kick out of this expansion, but it may not be for everybody. It is definitely one that I enjoyed because I loved Serious Sam 4, and I really like seeing some more put onto this. Can't wait for the next entry. Dying Light 2 Stay Human is a game that came out earlier this year in February, but I waited to pick up until there was a deal on Black Friday. And I decided to pick it up because I've seen a lot of buzz about this game, and it was personally recommended to me from another gamer that knows I'm not a big fan of action role-playing survival horror games. I did miss out from the first entry in this series, so I can't really compare it to that game. The only thing I do know for sure is that it's set about 22 years after the first Dying Light and has a brand new protagonist. But something I was not expecting from the gameplay of this game is just how much it's really kind of a game that reminds me of something like Uncharted or Prince of Persia, where you're doing a lot of climbing ledges, sliding, leaping off of edges, or wall running to navigate around your different environments. In that respect, I actually kind of found this fun and addicting, and I found it hard to put down and walk away, so I've actually invested a bit of time into this game by this point. I think the environment's a little hokey, and the survival horror aspect is kind of lost on me, as again, I'm not a huge fan of that genre, but I wasn't disappointed in this game, and I would definitely recommend it to people who aren't really fans of the genre either, and just want a nice little action game that they can get into, and if you just happen to be into the post-zombie apocalypse kind of setting, this game would definitely be for you as well. Earlier this year, I was working on my Ultimate Neo Geo review, and I had to pause when I got to the King of Fighters series so I could review each one of those to date, and at the time, King of Fighters 15 had not released, and so this was definitely one I was happy to pick up on my Xbox Series X when it came out back in February. Like many games in the past, the King of Fighters 15 uses a fighting system that has fighting teams composed of 3 fighters, as well as a parry system. And really, if you played King of Fighters 14, this game should be one that you can slip into quite easily, as they've carried over some features from that game, including some combos, to make things a bit easier for you as you first start out. Having played all of the numbered entries in the King of Fighters series at this point, I think this one is a fantastic tribute to the games that came before it, as well as offering something new for players to keep coming back to this franchise. As with any fighting game, it's not without its faults, and I definitely appreciate having an online mode, as I really don't like playing against the computer that much in fighting games, but I'm not very good at it, so I keep getting my butt handed to me. When I first got my PlayStation 5 plugged in and hooked onto the internet, I noticed that there was an Essentials pack from PlayStation Plus that allowed me to get a bunch of old PS4 games, basically the best of the system, and Horizon Zero Dawn was one of them. And it did take some time to get into the game, but I don't think I ever really beat it. So I wasn't really in a huge hurry to get Horizon Forbidden West, and I waited again till Black Friday to pick up this title, and I gotta say, it's not bad at all. I've seen some people criticize that the story in this game is not as good or as developed as in the original game, but I really like the opening cinematic that catches you up if you haven't played the first game, or at least haven't played it all the way through. It allowed me to get into the game very quickly and understand what's going on. The only big issue I ran into this game, at least initially, was that the controls were a bit frustrating to get used to. On one of my previous live streams, I attempted to pick up where I left off and I'd forgotten how to use the grapple move when jumping in midair. Off stream, I was able to figure out that the controls when you're jumping change from when you're just standing still when you're trying to grapple. Now granted, I find that to be a bit nitpicky, but it was something that stopped my forward progress in the game because I just could not remember that the controls for that changed when you're not standing on the ground. Other than that, I didn't really have a problem outside of that initial issue, and I really did enjoy playing this game, found it a bit addictive, and probably played it a lot longer than I should have sometimes, but definitely one I would say is essential to pick up if you have a PlayStation 5. Elden Ring has been on my list to pick up for a while, and I did finally get this game on Black Friday, but I haven't really gotten too far into it to make too much of a judgment on it. But really, what can I say about this game that hasn't already been said a billion times by other people out there? It's an action role-playing game played in a third-person perspective, really reminds me a lot of Dark Souls or Bloodborne, and it won Game of the Year, and I think rightfully so, as it is one of the better games I played through this year. Just hasn't made it any easier though. Grid Legends was an impulse buy on Black Friday for me, only because of how cheap it was on all of the consoles. This actually came out back in February, but I didn't pick it up till the end of November. I have been a huge fan of most of the racing games developed by Codemasters, and I was very disappointed to see that they were being bought out by Electronic Arts. And that's mainly because I suspected that the series would suffer because of their acquisition. And in this case, this being the first game that Electronic Arts published by Codemasters, I would say that I was definitely wrong about them changing things, because this feels almost exactly like the last Grid racing game that I played. Apparently I'm not the only one that thinks this, because in IGN's review they stated that it's not obvious at first glance, but Grid Legends is a definite step up from Grid 2019, with a bigger collection of racing tracks, more racing types, as well as other features. But in all honesty, since I didn't pay full price for this game, I feel like this was an adequate step up, at least on the next-gen systems. And really, they didn't have a lot to fix with Grid's gameplay, and I'm glad that it stayed similar enough for me to just dive right into it. So overall, as a fan of this series, having played other Grid racing titles, I didn't think this was a bad entry at all, and I definitely felt it was worth it for me. Now this is the first game in this list that I actually did not pick up. I'm only mentioning it here because of why I didn't pick it up. I have been a longtime fan of the Gran Turismo series, and it being exclusive to PlayStation. My brother first introduced me to Gran Turismo when he picked it up for the PlayStation 1 back in the day, and I was instantly hooked. I'm more of a fan of the arcade style of racing that Gran Turismo's offered over the years, but the simulation in this series has been pretty good too. The main thing that has stopped me from picking up this game is the fact that it requires 24/7 authentication to their servers, and when their servers go down, the game itself goes down, even if you're playing offline single player. And apparently that's happened a lot, because I have seen a lot of posts on social media asking, hey, are the servers down? And then seeing a response from Polyphony Digital or Sony saying, oh sorry, the servers were down, we're working to get them back up as soon as possible. And it's been like sometimes over days at a time for this to come back up. So until this is no longer a thing where you need to authenticate online and you can play it offline if you want, because that's going to be how I mainly play it, I'm going to have to continue to pass on this. However, if you have bought this game and you've had good experiences with it, let me know in the comments below and maybe I'll pick this up anyway. It did win the Game Awards Best Sports/Racing Game, so maybe this is something I'm actually missing out on. March brought us Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin. And when I first heard of this game, it kind of took me by surprise, as I missed all of the coverage of this game prior to its release. But what drew me into this game that made me have to try it was the fact that it was a reimagining of the very first Final Fantasy game. And like all the current reimaginings of the Final Fantasy games, they take the turn-based action and turn it into a real-time action role-playing game. And from my experience, the battle system in this game is the most addicting aspect and the reason why I kept coming back to it. I've seen reviews of this game be critical of everything from the story, sometimes being nonsensical and overly complex, to the frame rate dropping at times, to the design of the game just being ugly and not pleasant to look at. I will say I really enjoyed the game, but I think that the gameplay is the best aspect of the game, as the story itself I just found confusing, and usually that would be a game-breaking feature for me, especially with role-playing games, because the story is what drives your actions in the game. So while this game isn't the best in the series, as I think Final Fantasy VII's remakes are doing a better job at the moment, This game is a worthy addition to your collection, especially if you're a fan of this series and of the role-playing genre. I was really excited for Kirby and the Forgotten Land when they first revealed it in one of their Nintendo Directs, and I'm very happy to say the game did not disappoint once I popped it into my Switch. Everything that I like about the Kirby series is in this game, and it feels like they have perfected it. I feel like they described this game as Kirby's version of Super Mario Odyssey, but I really feel like this was more in the style of Super Mario 3D World, maybe with a hint of Odyssey kind of thrown in there. My biggest skepticism with this game was how were they going to make Kirby work in a 3D space, and honestly, I felt like again that they knocked this out of the park. Yes, this game is incredibly easy, but it's a Kirby game, and it's meant to be. What kept it interesting for me was the varying amount of Kirby's abilities, and every time I saw Kirby swallow a car, it just made me fill up a little bit inside with joy. It's a fun game all around, and I really feel like this is the best Kirby game I have played in the last few years, and that is saying something because I feel like all the Kirby games I played lately have been very good. I picked up LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga over the summer as well, and this was a great game to play through casually, but just like with all the other LEGO games, I feel like the best way to play this is with a second player. If you're familiar with any of the LEGO games in the series, especially the previous Star Wars ones, this one doesn't really break the mold too much, but I still find it endlessly enjoyable to go through and play, especially being a fan of Star Wars. The biggest feature of this game that I was happy to see is that it wasn't just a remaster of the first 6 games with 3 more games added onto it. They really took their time to redesign the levels and make this feel like a new gameplay experience. Nintendo Switch Sports was a game that I felt was going to be essential to pick up for your Nintendo Switch, almost in the way that Wii Sports is one you have to have if you have a Wii. And sadly, my impression of the game is that it just didn't live up to the hype. The only game that I really genuinely enjoyed playing was bowling, and I kept getting thrown off because I kept wanting to use the same controls as the Wii, where you let go of the button as you throw the ball, but you don't in this version, and it throws me off more than I'd like it to. Really, my main complaints of this game is that I still have my Wii hooked up with Wii Sports, and I'd rather play that than play this game. If this was the only way I had to play these games, it would probably change my opinion of this game, and I'd probably give it a little bit better of a review. But really, all of these games would have benefited more from having the Wii controller's accuracy, because the Joy-Cons just aren't the same thing as the Wii remotes. I don't know, am I alone in that opinion? What do you guys think of this game? I will say it also didn't help that the golf game that was promised with the game ended up being delayed until after the release, and up until this point I just realized I haven't even played the golf game yet, so maybe my opinion of the controls will improve once I play that part. Another game I was slightly disappointed with was Mario Strikers Battle League, but honestly I couldn't find anything very specific to gripe about with the game. I just found it overall boring and uninteresting. Sometimes I couldn't even tell if my player inputs were being recognized because I felt like what was happening on the screen wasn't matching the inputs I put in at times. But I haven't seen a lot of people making reference to that issue, so it must just be me. At the end of the day, I wasn't really a huge fan of the first Mario Strikers either, and this game is incredibly similar, at least in my opinion. If anything, I really didn't feel a draw to keep coming back to this game, like there was just stuff that should have been in here and was missing, or there should have been more developed to keep me more interested in it. I guess kind of like Mario Golf, which I found to be much better than this game. I haven't been back to this game since the first time I popped it into my Switch and I moved on to something else. So let me know if I need to come back there. Have they updated it since then? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge made Game Pass worth it for me for that month that it released. This game is an awesome tribute to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade games of the late 80s and early 90s. As much as I like Streets of Rage 4 for paying tribute back to those games, I definitely like this game for the same reasons. It really feels like they just took the old games of my childhood, added a new coat of paint, and improved the gameplay and made a few changes to it, and voila, we have Shredder's Revenge. My favorite addition of the game is the fact that they added multiplayer co-op online, which me and 3 other longtime viewers of my live streams actually went through and played through this game and beat it on the live stream. I don't think I've been back to this game since, but I would definitely be willing to give this another playthrough. As a longtime fan of the Pac-Man World series, I definitely thought this game could use a remaster, as it's been stuck on the PlayStation 1 for over 20 years. The very next live stream after this game was announced, I actually played the original Pac-Man world on PlayStation and got through the first world. So I kinda have how that game was set up in my head when I started playing this game, and I was pleasantly surprised to see they did some modern updates. Aside from the obvious graphical overhaul in the game, Pac-Man also gets some new moves, such as being able to destroy level objects after eating a power pellet, and Pac-Man being able to hover in the air, which is a much welcome addition from the original. I haven't gotten all the way through it, but so far what I've played has been very good. So if you're a fan of those classic 2.5D action platforming games, I would definitely recommend this. So when I walked in the store and I saw Sonic Frontiers next to God of War Ragnarok, I decided to get Sonic Frontiers because it has been much longer since I've played a good 3D Sonic game than the last time I played a good God of War game. And oh boy was I not disappointed. When I first popped this game in and played through the first world, I almost got all the way through the first island in one sitting. I really enjoyed the open world aspect of being able to go between the levels and kind of the role-playing elements of leveling up Sonic as you go through. But now that I've gotten some more hours into it, I can see a couple of the game's flaws where it gets kind of tedious and repetitive. And yeah, there is pop-in in the game, which I didn't notice as much because all 3D games that I grew up with back in the day had pop-ins, so it wasn't something that distracted me from the gameplay. But my gosh, is it finally good to see Sonic hit his stride, even if they are just blatantly ripping off Breath of the Wild. That was a comment I've seen several times on forums, so, I mean, I guess if they're ripping off the good games and not the bad games, isn't that a good thing? But there you go, overall that is my experience in gaming in the year 2022. There were a lot of games that were delayed into 2023, so there were a bunch of them that I was disappointed I wasn't able to play this year, but I was surprised at the amount of titles that I did find that I genuinely ended up enjoying and was looking forward to. Of course, these are not all of the games I wanted to get out of this year, and there are still several titles that have been released that I will probably be picking up sometime in the next year or two, as long as there aren't too many games that'll break the bank in 2023. But seriously, there have been a bunch of games released this year, and I was kind of surprised how many I found that I bought this year, because most of my time has been spent playing retro games in preparation for the Ultimate Super Nintendo review. But I guess I'll ask, how many of you have picked up some of the same games I have, and which ones that I haven't picked up from this year would you recommend I make a priority early in 2023 to get, and which ones did I make a mistake picking up instead of picking up a better game that came out? In the end though, I am mostly happy with my game pickups that I had this year for brand new titles. Usually I don't go for a lot of brand new games when they first come out. I'll wait for a discount, or I'll wait to see some of the reviews before I know if it's really worth picking out. Which I really wish I would have waited to get like Mario Strikers and Nintendo Switch Sports, because I wasn't really too sure about those, and getting them so close to launch meant I wasn't able to spot some of the things that I wouldn't like about those games. Out of all the games that I did pick up, I think my personal favorite probably has to be, I'm gonna say Sonic Frontiers. That is mainly being influenced by the fact that it's been such a long time since I've played a good 3D Sonic game, and I really feel like this one, while not perfect, was definitely one of the better games that have been released all the way since Sonic Colors, which was the last 3D one that I genuinely enjoyed. And after playing that remaster that came out last year, I was definitely happy to take on a brand new adventure with Sonic, and it has really felt like a fully fleshed out epic journey for Sonic that I've been craving for way too long. That said, I think this about wraps up things for this video and for this year on the channel. Again, let me know what you guys thought about this video in the comments below, and I will see you all in the new year. If you like this video and you'd like to help out with future projects on this channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A special thanks to those Patreons you see on screen. Also, if you like what you see, please remember to leave a like and click that subscribe button on your way out. As always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.